Today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/figureoutyourlife. With over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, and Kindle. Now let's get to the show. Welcome to Figure Out Your Life podcast, a weekly podcast where we learn how to deal with life situations. I am your host, Toya T. Dr. T, if you nasty, your girlfriend with a PhD, the sis that will help you get through all the mess. Anyway, hi guys, welcome back. I hope you guys had a great week, great weekend. I definitely did. This podcast is a day late, mainly for the fact that I had such a great weekend in Montreal. If you were listening to last week's episode, you know that I took a road trip to Montreal with one of my good sister friends from high school. And the purpose of the trip was, one, she wanted to go there to celebrate her birthday. So her birthday, my friend Tania, hey girl, was on September 11th, and she had been, toying around with going someplace for her birthday, and Montreal happened to be one of the place that she wanted to go. So she had asked, like maybe in August, like, hey, anyone wants to go to Montreal for my birthday? And I was like, yeah, I think I should be able to go. But funny thing is, and how this trip really was solidified was the fact that, and here's my nerd moment, I was going up there for a Pokemon Go Safari Zone event. This was my first Pokemon event. For those who know me, who follow me on the gram, then you should know that I am a huge Pokemon Go fan. I play the game every single day. I've been trying to go to a Pokemon event for a very long time, since they started having them, and I never was able to get tickets because they always had them in a lottery system, and I never won the lottery system. Like, I just have not won the lottery, period. Just not something that I am gifted with. So this time I actually was able to get tickets. Like, I just happened to be on my app and it was like, tickets are available. And I was like, okay, let me just see. And I waited for 15 minutes to be able to purchase tickets to this thing. And it's just so funny because it turned out to be the same weekend that my friend Tania wanted to go to Montreal. So I was like, oh shit, this is kismet. Like, this is meant to be. This is divine, providence. This is, I am meant to go to Montreal. So that's how we ended up going to Montreal, because I was going to go there anyway and she wanted to go. So that is how that happened. And from the people that she wanted to, she asked to go on the trip, I was the only one that was confirmed. So it ended up being a trip of two, and it was a great trip. And it also inspired today's podcast topic, which you should know ahead of time because you can read. So this week's episode is figuring out how to road trip with friends, or road tripping with friends. It hit me like Saturday. Like when I was like Saturday night, I was like, this is a perfect topic to talk about, especially since I just did it. And, this is a great time to go road tripping because it is the fall. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. And for those who have never done it before, I wanted to make sure that you were fully prepared for road tripping. I am someone who has gone on a couple road trips with friends. And I say this quite often to people that that is really the test of friendships, the test of relationships, when you really get to know like who people are. There's like three events. There's weddings, funerals, and road trips, because in all three of those events, people will show their ass. And I already talked to you guys about, weddings and how to be a great wedding guest, because when you don't turn out to be a good wedding guest, you can end up losing a friend or having a change in your relationship. Or if you're planning a wedding and people start showing their ass in your family, among your friends, you see exactly who they are. Same thing with funerals. Someone dies and all of a sudden people start acting an ass. They start acting like they broke. They start acting like they were the only person connected to the loved one. And for road trips, it's the same thing, not even depending on how long it is. No matter how long the trip is, if it's over an hour, if it's over 2 hours, you are really going to find out who this person is. It's different than when you're, road tripping with your family, because they're going to be your family forever. But when you decide to road trip with a friend, it can make or break a relationship. So, and I'm telling you this from experience, and I'm going to tell you my stories of road tripping. But before I do that, I, of course, had to do my due diligence, and I had to go and do some research and find out, what is out there about road tripping with friends. And so I did my Googles so that you didn't have to. And I found 7 tips from Toyota, the car brand, which makes sense. I think I saw when I put in how to road trip with friends or tips on road tripping with friends, it was one of the first things that popped up. And there was a couple other car companies that had suggestions on how to road trip with friends, which makes sense because they are trying to build a community. They want you to buy their cars. And then they're now, all these companies are getting into blogging and, having little personal articles and blogs on their sites because they want to, get people engaged in their car community. And so this was one of the things that they had, which I thought was interesting. So they have 7 tips, and I'm just going to add in things that I, think are, applicable to this conversation and make more sense, for my folks listening. So here we go. I just want to jump right into this. So 7 tips. Number 1, which is so freaking obvious, but again, sometimes people, that's why we have those books, Blank for Dummies. It's probably one of the most popular book brands because we all need a little very basic to the point list of things to do when you're trying to plan something. So surprise, surprise, or not surprise. The number 1 tip is for them, and this is going in order, I guess, for them. Pick a destination, which makes sense. So I just told you guys exactly why we ended up going to Montreal. I was going there for the Pokemon Go event and to celebrate my friend's birthday, and also to just go to a new city. I've never been to Quebec before or to Montreal. I have family, pretty much the majority of my father's side of the family that is outside of Dominica is in Canada. And so my aunts and my uncle live there. I have cousins that live in Canada, and I've been to Canada many times as a child, not so much as an adult. My brother lives in Canada. My younger brother, my youngest brother lives in Canada, but they all live in Ontario. So I've been to Ontario, I've been to Toronto, I've been to other places within Ontario, but I'd never been to Quebec before, and I didn't even know that it was that close. Seeing that I drive to New York quite often, and it's a 4-hour drive. I can do it on my head. At this point, I went to college in New York, I went to graduate school in New York, and so I'm used to the drive on bus, on train, on plane, on car, maybe even by foot at this point. But I never even thought that there were other places that would be of interest that are just as close. So the drive from here, from where I live in Boston, the Boston area, to New York is about 4 hours, less than 4 hours. And the drive from here, from my house, from where I live to Quebec is about 5 hours, less than 5 hours. I said, I think about 4 hours and 52 minutes. And I was like, oh shit, this is a good destination. But definitely the first thing you need to do is to pick a destination. You need to know where the fuck you're going. Because how are you having a trip when you don't know where you're going? And the best thing to do, especially if you think that you want to do a road trip, and this is for just going on trips with friends in general, you should, very much have a consensus of where you want to go. And in this case, it worked out, right? It worked out because I wanted to go. She invited me to go for a birthday trip, and I ended up also having an event that same weekend she wanted to go. So Montreal was a agreed upon destination between the two of us. Now, for other road trip experiences that I've had, and I've actually had a few of them, not too many, but a few, because in most cases I prefer to fly. Then if I can, fly or train, if I can, then have to drive anywhere because it's tiring. But the longest trip that I have taken, I actually drove cross country, and I guess it's semi half country, but I would still say it's cross country. I drove from Atlanta to Santa Barbara in California because I was in graduate school. I was living in Atlanta, and I had gotten a dissertation fellowship at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And so since I had all this stuff that I needed to move over to California for my fellowship there, and also because I just saw it as a perfect time to also take a road trip. I'd never, driven across the country, and I've always wanted to do it ever since I saw Gayle King and Oprah do it on the Oprah show, a long time ago. For those who are too young to remember, well, why are you listening to me? Just kidding. But Oprah and Gail, her best friend, took a road trip and they recorded the whole thing. They drove across country and it was like this big hoopla. Like they had a whole series. And I just thought it was so funny because like they were like best friends forever. And you even saw them arguing. You saw them, singing in the car. You saw them like arguing about where to eat, where to stop, where to take pictures. And so I was like, this is a perfect time for me to make a road trip. So again, there was a destination that was picked, but I actually just put out a call. So this one wasn't like, it happened to be an agreed upon place or someone else's suggestion. This one was like, it was mine. Like I said, okay, I need to move to Santa Barbara. And if any of my friends would like to road trip with me, please just let me know. 'Cause I would love to have some company. And so I had a friend that who did volunteer to drive with me. And so the destination, there was no argument about the destination. But I would mention that when you make a long road trip, because that really was cross country. I mean, the Atlanta's in the South, but it's very much on the East Coast. It's right above Florida. It's right there on the East Coast. And I went all the way to the West Coast. It took, we stopped. It took us about a week to do so, I think, like 5 days. Not because it takes that long to get there. It does not. But because we stopped in several places. But I figured out like different stopping points because I didn't want to do too much driving. This was the first long drive I had ever done since I got my license. I had never really done long. Like the longest road trip I'd ever done with anybody, I mean, like family, was to Canada with my father. And, I was a child, so I was sleeping, like sleeping or, reading a book or something. So it didn't really matter to me. I didn't have the burden of figuring out where to stop and gas stops and splitting. Like I didn't have to decide about that. But when you are making a long trip, I'm just going to go back to the subject because I'm rambling. When you make a long trip, you should also decide to stop along the way, especially if you have never been to these places. And so for the long road trip that I took, from the cross-country road trip I took, there were certain points that I designated as places to stop, and mostly because I knew people there and because they were major cities. So the first day we went from Atlanta to New Orleans. That was, we decided that we would, get there early enough, be able to have like a good night in New Orleans. Plus we both knew someone from college that lived in New Orleans, so had a place to stay. Didn't have to worry about paying for a place to stay, but then also had someone like to bring us around and do things. So we stayed we stopped in New Orleans, and that was cool. I really, really love New Orleans. It wasn't the first time I was there, but it was my second time being there within a year, because I had gone there when I was still living in Atlanta. I had gone there for a conference for the Association of Black Sociologists conference, and I had so much fun. And the hotel was right there on Bourbon. We stayed at the Royal Sonesta Hotel. It was just like, oh, damn, it was like so nice. But that was the second time I had been to New Orleans and got a chance to see a different side, because my friend was living, in the residential areas of New Orleans. So that was cool. But that was a decided point because of knowing someone there and it being like a city that you want to see. The second stop I decided on, because I only wanted to do maybe not a whole day of driving. I wanted to make sure that that for both of us that we were able to get a full night's sleep and then just leave in the morning. 6 o'clock in the morning, but just you wake up, have breakfast, and you go. So 9, 10 o'clock, you should be gone, and try to get to the next place by maybe 5, 6 o'clock. So trying to do about maybe 8 hours of driving, 12 at the most. But so the next stop after that was Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where we knew another person from college, which was cool. Again, didn't have to pay for hotel, and that is something that you should think about. So think about different destinations. If you know people along the way from college, from whatever network, from family members, this is a perfect time if you're doing a long road trip to kind of make your map around where they live. And so, of course, there was definitely faster ways to get from Atlanta to Santa Barbara, but definitely decided to pick destinations where I would get to like meet up with people and get to spend some time and get to relax and be, just make this a fun trip, because it's a long time in the car, but you should make sure that you pick destinations along the way that made sense. So just to finish it off, after that, we went to, I think, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Didn't know anybody there, stayed at a Best Western. That was cool. But that was like ahead of time. So like it wasn't too far ahead in like terms of like where are we going to stop, because I was trying to decide between either stopping in Albuquerque or Santa Fe, and could have done either one of them. They're like just right in the middle of the state, but decided on Albuquerque because I don't remember why, but Albuquerque is also like a major city in New Mexico. But I think we decided on that destination, or I think I did most of the planning. So let me stop saying we. I decided on the destination the night before, like, still in Dallas, like using my computer, booking a hotel, like literally the night before, which I don't necessarily suggest. But then again, if you're taking a road trip, you don't know what may happen in between. So you might, it comes up in the tips, but, let me just continue and I'll get to the next tip. So stopped in Albuquerque, stayed in a hotel there. Then the next stop was Flagstaff, Arizona, which I picked because it was the closest city to the southern entrance of the Grand Canyon, and I really wanted to go see the Grand Canyon while road tripping. It didn't happen for various reasons. Hence why I said that, road trips can make or break friendships, and this one definitely broke this friendship, but we will get to it. And then after that, stopped in Los Angeles because new college friend there, even though I could have continued on to Santa Barbara. But like the trip from Flagstaff, Arizona to Los Angeles is about 11 to 12 hours. And then the trip from Los Angeles to Santa Barbara is about another 2 hours. And that was way past, the amount of time that I wanted to be driving. And also just knowing someone in LA. And since I was going to be moving to the Southern California area, I wanted to stop off at this friend's house, just to, know where he lives, just to rest and hang out, and then continue in the morning and be able to fully take in the sights of driving from Los Angeles north to Santa Barbara without having a rush. So that's when it ended up happening. So if you counted that out, the places that we stopped, even though the destination was Santa Barbara, we stopped in 1, New Orleans, 2, Dallas, 3, Albuquerque, 4, Flagstaff, 5, Los Angeles, and then went on to Santa Barbara. So that was 5 different stops in between. And there's a lot of other things I wanted to check out. There was I forgot what state we were in, but we did see the point where of Route 66, from the song Route 66, like the famous Route 66, which pretty much showed us halfway. Like we saw the halfway point from to Chicago to LA. Like it was just like really cool, but wanted to do more stuff like that, but that didn't happen. But either way, you got to pick your destination ahead of time. You need to know where you're going. And if you're making a long road trip, you should definitely pick the destinations you want to stop at along the way. Number 2 of their tips is figure out a loose plan. And in terms of what they're saying, they're like, make sure the dates are flexible. Like you kind of have an idea of where you want to, what dates you want to go and where you want to stay. And so for the Montreal trip, I told you, like, it was already set. Like it just ended up being set because she had said that she wanted to go the weekend of the 21st and the 22nd. And then I ended up getting tickets for the Pokemon event on the 22nd. So I was like, girl, perfect. I was going to be in Montreal anyway. So it just worked out. When it came to my long road trip, I left. The dates were already set because obviously I had to move out of my apartment. 1, 2, I also needed to, so I guess I left. When did I leave? I guess I left because I think the end of my lease, my Atlanta apartment lease, I think it ended in that July. So I guess I moved out. Yeah. So I moved to California in the August. I also had to make sure that my housing at UC Santa Barbara was ready. So that kind of determined when to leave, even though I had a place to stay in between. So I stayed with another college friend that lived in Atlanta. I stayed at her place for like a night before driving over to California. but the dates were pretty much, set. But again, as I said, like I didn't really have like, I wasn't in a rush to get there. Like my housing was ready in California. So because I was living in family housing on UC Santa Barbara's campus. So that was set. That pretty much gave us the flexibility to kind of mess around with the date. So being able to leave when I'm ready. But I also had to know when my friend could come down because she was a teacher and she needed to be able to go back to work, and be able to be there for the professional days before school started. So that kind of determined the dates too. And I already told you about where to stay. So I decided on where to stay based off of, did I know people that lived in these places along the way? And I think I had put out a Facebook blast saying like, hey, do any of you people live in any of the states in between, like, Georgia and California? Because I'd love to visit and hopefully get to stay with you. And I think that's how I ended up finding the two people that lived, that were from college, that lived in New Orleans and in Dallas, because I didn't even know they lived there. So that was extremely helpful in that sense. And then again, decided for the states where we didn't know people to do it based off of like, what have you heard of that you always wanted to see? So like, I've heard of Albuquerque, I've heard of Santa Fe, and it was just a toss up of like, which one is the easiest to get to on our route. And Albuquerque just happened to work for that. And for Flagstaff, again, I said I really wanted to go to the Grand Canyon. And again, I was like really ignorant of where the Grand Canyon was. And when I found out it was in Arizona, part of it was in Arizona, I was like, oh shit, like definitely want to go. Like, where do people go to the Grand Canyon? And Flagstaff popped up as like, the place to be. And also picked the hotel based off of the ratings it had on, I don't know what I used, TripAdvisor or whatever, that said like, this is like one of the number one hotels that people stay at, when they're going to the Grand Canyon, because it was only, I think, less than an hour's drive to the southern entrance of the Grand Canyon entrance, the southern entrance of the Grand Canyon. Man. So that's how we picked out the dates and where to stay, but it was pretty loose. As I said, it took 5 days. It didn't have to take 5 days. It could have taken longer. We could have stayed in New Orleans another day. We could have stayed in Dallas another day. We could have done anything. I wanted to go to the Grand Canyon, but my friend really fucked that up. So, I mean, I would have loved to have stayed 2 days in Arizona and, spend the night, go to the Grand Canyon, then spend the night and then drive on. But again, shit didn't happen. But that's what happens when you have a loose plan. You kind of just have to go with it. And also what you should figure out ahead of time is the driving and the splitting of the expenses. It's not on this list, but I don't know why it's not fucking on there. The list is about road tripping with friends, not with your family, not with your mama and your daddy or your sister, your brother. This is about road tripping with friends where you have to talk out expenses so that you don't have problems. So ahead of time, for the one to Montreal, we had already decided that we would drive in my car because my friend Tania's car was having some issues. And it worked out because since I live south of Boston and she lives north, she lives actually in Boston, I would have to travel through Boston anyway to start driving to Montreal. So it just worked out. I drive in my car, I pick her up, and we go. So that worked out. And we also didn't really decide on the gas part, but I guess I've been friends with Tania for like 24 years. So I wasn't worried about like, hey girl, you didn't pay me for gas, or she wouldn't think to pay me for gas. Like I know she would. So it wasn't really a discussion, but for friends that you don't know that well, you should just discuss it ahead of time. But I paid for gas. I filled up my tank and it didn't take I was able to drive up there on a full tank of gas. I think we still had more than a quarter of gas left when we got to Montreal. So I paid for that gas. When we got there and we were driving around the city, she paid for gas. And then she also drove in the city. So I drove up, she drove in the city. I didn't drive at all in when we were in Canada, except for when we got to the hotel. And then she drove from Canada to Vermont, and she had said, that she wasn't comfortable driving at night because, you know, sometimes she might fall asleep, and she had to go to work the next day, and I don't have to go to work the next day. So I was like, cool, you drive there. I'll drive from Vermont. She paid for gas. Look at that. Clean. No problems. For the long road trip, the cross country trip, what ended up happening is that we decided that we would pay for gas every other gas station. So every other time we had to fill up, the other person would pay. So that worked out. It works out cleanly. It ends up being even at the end. We also decided that whenever we stopped for gas, so like you get to a half tank, and then so you fill your gas tank. We filled up the gas tank at the beginning of the day before we started driving. And when it gets to the half tank mark, since we didn't know where we were going, you need to go and stop at the first gas station so that you don't end up stuck somewhere. So, when we would get to half tank, we would get the gas, and then the other person drove. So that worked out well because it tended to be that you end up driving half of the way and then switch off with the other driver. Cool. If you have more than one person, obviously that will work out better, but you should definitely have a driving plan. If everyone has their license and has insurance, it should work out fine that you just, you know, have a sheet, have a list of like, you drive first, you drive second, you drive third, you drive fourth, no matter, you know, depending on how many people you have. Or if it's like not that long, just say like you drive the whole way and everyone else will pay gas, or someone else will switch off. You know, you get it. Just be fair, but you should have these things thought out ahead of time as a part of your plan. And the same thing about expenses, like, hey, I will pay, you know, for the gas, or we'll split the gas in terms of like you pay and everyone will just pay you back, or Venmo you, PayPal you, you know, put it directly into your account, Zelle you. You know, we have so many ways of paying each other now that we didn't have when I drove from Atlanta to Santa Barbara, and that was in 2010. Yeah, we didn't have all those options. So it became like a cash thing. Like, I'll take a cash, here you go. But definitely have those things out there so that you can have the smoothest ride there, but you still have like wiggle room. Number 3 on their list is make a list of activities and attractions. So I already told you for the cross country trip, I kind of had like an idea, but it was really like, it really wasn't ahead of time. Like, for someone like me who loves to plan and loves to make lists, it's really funny that I don't sometimes spend more time figuring out things that I want to do ahead of time. Like, sometimes I will and sometimes I won't. So in the case of Montreal, all I knew is that I wanted to go there. I was there for Pokemon. I didn't care about anything else. Just Pokemon. And so Tania was sending me all of these, like, you know, like articles about like from Time Out magazine on like 7 things you need to do in Montreal and the best attractions in Montreal. And I didn't look at that list at all. She found out that when we were there. She's like, didn't you look at the list? I said, no, girl, I did not. She's like, damn, I wasted all my time. You didn't even look at the list. And I was like, well, I really didn't care. I just wanted to go to Pokemon thing. Like, anything you wanted to go to was cool with me. The only thing she had sent me that I looked at was like this lounge she wanted to go to. That looked really cool. We didn't end up going. We ended up figuring out different plans once we got to the hotel, and one of the waitresses at the hotel's the hotel bar had suggested like places for us to go. So we just went with that instead, which worked out very well. We ended up going to Port Royal or Old Montreal, the Old Montreal area. Great place, had dinner there, walked around, went to go see the Ferris wheel over there. It was just such a cool area. And it just didn't make sense for us to go to the lounge after because we had been driving all day. And then I was like, I definitely need some sleep. Like, I just can't be like, I'm old girl. Like, I'm not old, but I'm old. Like, I'm 36 years old, you 37. Like, I don't know about you, but I am cool having drinks and dinner and then walking around a really nice place and taking pictures. And it was like at 10 o'clock already. I was like, I don't need to be going to a lounge until God knows when. Like, I have my drinks. I'm cool. I'm going to go to bed after we come back, which is exactly what happened. But you should definitely have a list of activities and attractions. So there was a couple things she wanted to see. We were able to do so. And in terms of the cross country trip that I took, again, I said I based it based off of where we were stopping. And so I usually did for the places where we weren't staying with friends, I pretty much just did the research the night before on my laptop. Like, okay, what do we want to see in Albuquerque? I guess nothing really, but just, it's a beautiful place just in general. I wish we had stopped actually more in New Mexico. And for Arizona, that was a whole other thing. Like, oh, we can go to Grand Canyon. Like, that was something I wanted to see, like randomly coming across the Route 66 midpoint. That was, that was something that was unplanned. Didn't even know that was on the way, but it was cool. Like, you just pay attention to like the, when they have the signs on the highway that tell you like what is coming up, like gas stations, or like, here's a lookout point, or, you are 2 miles away from the Route 66 midpoint, or the largest ball of twine, or 12-ounce steaks, which we saw a lot in Texas. There was so many freaking signs talking about, please stop up at this, at this restaurant to try our 20-ounce steak, and you get it free if you can finish it or whatever. Didn't go to those, but like, that's why you keep loose plans, and, you can just add things to your list of activities and attractions as you go. And so that worked out well, at least for me. Like, you just don't want it to be too rigid, because if you do, then like someone's going to get mad because you didn't go to something. And you should definitely have things that you definitely want to see, and that's discussed ahead of time. And then after that, just keep it nice and loose, but make sure that you have activities, so you're not just there and don't have nothing to do and you're just bored looking at each other. Number 4, they said, get your car checked. Duh. Now, let me explain to you why that's important. So the trip to Montreal, no problem. My car had been, again, we picked my car because my car hasn't had any major issues. I already had my oil changed and everything. I wasn't due for another oil change until like December. I cleaned my car, actually cleaned it so I can have a guest in there, because it would have smelled like freaking Five Guys. Five Guys and the last spring semester of teaching, because I really had been meaning to clean my car all summer and finally did it, because I was like, oh, this girl gonna be in my car. I can't have my car looking dirty, my white chocolate, aka my white Honda. I couldn't embarrass her like that, so I cleaned her the week before the trip. But you should also check your tires. So I made sure that I checked all of the air pressure on my tires, filled up the air, went to those, like, I love those automatic machines now where they pretty much tell you when to take the air off the tire. So they'll tell you if your tire is like at the recommended level. And so I did that ahead of time, got gas ahead of time. Everything else was good. You should check your fluids and your oils if you hadn't gotten an oil change or any of that stuff ahead of time, especially if you're taking a long trip. Definitely do that. And so I did do that with my car when we took the cross country trip, because my dad was like, you definitely need to go and make sure that your car is serviced before you take a long trip like this. So I did listen to him. But I was also a novice. It was my first car. And or actually my second car, because my first car, I got into a accident. Not my fault. I was hit from the rear by a City of Atlanta public works person at a stoplight. And he completely totaled my car a month after I got it. So it wasn't my first car. It was my second car. Same model, same make, same year. My Nissan Sentra. 2005 Nissan Sentra. So was it 2005? Yeah, 2005 Nissan Sentra. And I got it all checked out. I went to Pep Boys because I was still, I was poor. I was a poor grad student. And my second car. And I really didn't know much, but Pep Boys was right up the street from my apartment. So I brought it there. They, checked the fluids, did the oil change, checked the tires. I did everything that my dad told me to tell them to do. Like, check the air tires, please. Like, can you please check this, check that? So check your fluids, check your tire pressure, and make sure all that is good. But also try to understand what it is. Like, I would also suggest, if you are taking a long trip, you might want to buy an extra tire and not just the donut. So here's what happened on the long trip, the cross country trip. I had 2 tire blowouts in the middle of nowhere. So we made it all the way to Texas. No problems, right? We leave Texas. Now, this is when, when you're driving along the way, you should definitely check your tire pressure more than once. I did not do that. even though my dad told me to. I did not do that. Or maybe he didn't, because I think I would have done it if he told me to. Again, didn't know. Just young, 20-something old me, just did not know. And had a tire blowout right before we were leaving Texas. So we were at like the very top of Texas, about to go into New Mexico, and all of a sudden, boom! I was not driving. Now, to point out that for both tire blowouts, I wasn't driving. I'm not saying it was my driving companion's fault, but both times she was driving. So and both times, God, I'm gonna tell you how much. Like, I'm not like super religious, but I will tell you one thing. I do know that God and whoever the spirits, whoever you believe in, whatever entity you believe in, and I'll just say for the entity that I believe in is God. Oh, God loved me. Jesus loved me, because for someone who's this young black woman in the middle of fucking Texas, right? And we were on one of those roads that when you watch movies, if you've never been to Texas, never been to the middle of the country, never been to the Southwest, when you're thinking about those long road trips, you've ever seen Forrest Gump when he was just like running on that road, like you've ever seen like the Roadrunner cartoons from Looney Tunes. Again, I'm trying to like paint the picture for you. 2-lane road, 2-lane highway, right? On the near the border of Texas and New Mexico. No cars on the road, really. Just 2 cars. Just happened to be my car and a car behind us. This is one of these roads where you see like tumbleweeds, desert, road, horizon. That's it. Nothing there. And again, we didn't drive at night because, again, safety. My mom made sure, she was like, do not drive at night. Wake up in the morning, leave, drive until it's about to get close to dark, stop for the night, start the next, get a full night of sleep, go on the next day. Worked perfectly. So the tire blows out. Didn't know what the fuck that was. I was like, what is that noise? Oh my gosh. So we stopped the car. Here's where God came in, right? God came in the version, in the form of a middle-aged, maybe 20-something, 30-something, not middle-aged. Okay, so 20, 30-something white man. Like, that was in a truck, like a van truck. Like he looks like like a work truck, whatever. Who also pulled over with us. And he got out his car and he came up and he said, I saw your tire smoking. And I pulled over because I knew you were going to have a tire blowout. And I was like, look at that. And you know what he did? What he also did? He changed the tire for us, because me and my female companion, I'm not saying that women can't change tires, because I have changed a tire by myself, but not at this moment. Remember, this is my first car. And we're in the middle of nowhere. And I could have figured it out, but like, think cell phone service fucked up. Like, you're in the middle of nowhere. He changed the tire, put the donut on. That's why I said you should probably try to get a new tire, because a donut can only take you so long. He changed the tire for me, put the donut on, and then told us where to stop at across the border of New Mexico where we can get a good deal on a tire. That is God. And I'm not trying to I'm not proselytizing. I'm not trying to convert nobody. I'm just telling you that the higher powers and my praying granny, yeah, it works. My granny prayed for all her grandchildren, her children, her great-grandchildren, her great-great-grandchildren every single morning. And I know she was praying that morning and it worked out. It worked out. God was like, you got a grandchild over there who about to have a tire blowout in the middle of nowhere. And if that man wasn't there, God knows how long it would have taken us to figure out how to change the tire. And we probably would have gone someplace that would have tried to try to upcharge me tons of money for the tire. So I was able to do that. And then we had another tire blowout in Arizona, right? So made it out of New Mexico, got to Arizona. The second one might've been my fault, because when I got the new tire, the guys changed the tire and they checked all the tire pressure. The next morning, my dumb ass decided to go and put air in the tires just to make sure to top them off. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. And it wasn't one of those machines that tell you when your tire pressure is at the recommended level. And so I think I put too much air in the tire, and then the tires were not level. And so we had another tire blowout in Arizona. But again, look at God, right? So in this one, what happened was that we got a tire blowout right before there was a rest area. And so the tire blew and we were able to drive slowly to the rest area. And my travel companion was able to find in the middle of Arizona, this black man who was a truck driver from New Jersey. I was like, out of all places. So he changed the tire again for us. And I was like, look at that. 2 tire blowouts, 2 circumstances where we had strangers help to change the tire. Didn't end up destitute somewhere. Didn't take too much time off of the travel plan. Still got to the next destination before it was too dark. Didn't end up like eaten by coyotes or, taken by some, highway killer. We were good. But definitely make sure when you do this to check all that stuff. I'll also add on to this, I'll add on to this that you should also check your cell phone plan, which I learned when I got to Canada. And I got a good thing to get off my chest on Verizon. I'm gonna say it early now. Fuck you, Verizon. But check your cell phone service. If you're driving within your own country, obviously it should be fine. But when you go out of your home state that the service can vary. So at least make sure that you're covered wherever you're going. If you're going into another country like I was, make sure you get an international plan. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Again, poor planning on my part. And also on currency. If you're driving into another country, make sure you have the right currency, or you can still be able to or have credit cards that don't have international issues. That's it I have to say about that. But so number 5, have plenty of entertainment options. In their case, they're suggesting that you download playlists, podcasts, and or audiobooks so that you're not bored, because you don't want to be bored during a road trip. And for the road trip to Montreal, I always go on the whole, if you drive and you can listen to whatever you want to listen to. Since I drove the whole way up, and Tania really didn't really have a suggestion on what to listen to. She was just like, oh, just listen to what you listen to. So I listened to a podcast on the way up. Well, on the way to her house, I'll tell you now, I was listening to Game of Thrones, book number 2. So Clash Kings, audiobook. I was listening to that on the way to her house. And then I got to her and I was like, I don't think you want to listen to a Game of Thrones book. So I switched it over to a podcast and listened to the first time to Secret Lives of Black Women, which I would suggest you check out. Just check them out. It's one of the suggested podcasts. If you subscribe to my podcast, Apple Podcasts will also suggest you listen to them too. I also listened to the first time to Deadass with, oh my gosh, what are their names? The Ellises. So you can check that out too. That was cool. Listen to a little bit of music, but again, you should just have lots of things that are available. Download it on your phone. And I'm saying download it because you may, again, once you go out of your state, you may have spotty areas where you don't have service. And if you don't have unlimited data, like I have unlimited data, you don't want to use up all your data on things that have to be streaming. So you should download whatever you want to listen to, so you have plenty of options to keep yourself occupied. They also suggested having games and other things, but obviously that's for people who are not driving. But definitely, you don't want to be bored. Come up with something to do while you're driving, especially since if you do plan to listen to the radio. Once you get out of your home state, you don't know what the next radio station is in the next place. So you don't want to have to rely on the radio, and you don't want to have to rely on data services and streaming. You want to have things on your phone automatically that will play regardless if you have service or not. Number 6, this is don't be afraid to break from the plan. I agree with that. That is why they say you have loose plans, because things will happen. Those 2 tire blowouts that I had on the cross-country trip, it happened. And since I didn't really have a set time that I wanted to get to Santa Barbara, it didn't really matter to me. Like I said, I really wanted to go to the Grand Canyon after I found out halfway through the trip that the Grand Canyon was a possibility to go see. Like you keep your plans loose because sometimes you might have to break it. The same thing with Montreal. Like, you know, Tania wanted to suggest going to the Milky Way Lounge, and we didn't end up going because we ended up going someplace else that was just as cool, just that fit in. I mean, it was a great, beautiful weekend in Montreal. And I heard that for the most part in the East Coast, it was pretty beautiful, like 80 something degrees, 80, 90 degrees. It was 80 something degrees in Montreal that weekend. And we were able to just like, you know, have dinner outside. We had dinner outside at the Sea Salt and Ceviche restaurant in Old Montreal, and was able to sit outside with everybody. It was just so cool. We walked on the boardwalk after that, like went over to see the Ferris wheel that's over there, which I forgot what it's called. For my people in Canada who know Montreal or whatever, like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But went to go see that, walked along, just was paying attention. And then it was already like 10 o'clock because when we got there, it was about like 2 o'clock we got there, because I left my house like 7:30, got to her house like 8:30, and we did not stop because I don't like to stop when I'm driving. We didn't stop. So we got up there. It was still early afternoon. We checked in. We were hungry because we didn't stop, like I said, because I had snacks in the car, but we wanted lunch. So we went to the restaurant in the hotel, which worked out great. And, you know, ended up just chilling out there. The waitress was like really helpful. She was telling us about different things to do, to check out while we were there on that day, on Saturday and for Sunday. So we wrote that stuff down, kept track of that. Then went upstairs and took a little bit of a nap. Well, Tania took a nap. I didn't take a nap. I was doing my nails because I was like, shit, I drove all the way up to Montreal with some fucked up nails. I gotta do my nails. So I did my nails, and then we got dressed and then went into the city and went to a couple places before deciding on going to the old part of Montreal. Found a nice place to have dinner and had dinner and just enjoyed our time. Like, it was just, you know, going with the flow. The next day we knew that we were going to go to Mille End in Montreal, because it was also suggested by the I think Tania had looked it up, and the waitress had said, yeah, that's a good place to hang out. And there's plenty of like breakfast places and stuff. So we went there and got breakfast, just picked a place that morning, said, okay, we'll go there, you know, checked out, went there for the breakfast. And since my Pokemon event was from 12 to 6, she dropped me off at the event. I was there from 12 to 6 because I paid for it and I'm serious about my Pokemon shit. So and so then she picked me up and we left. We left, got gas, went to a rest stop in Vermont, switched off, and we were good. So you should definitely not be afraid to break plans. Like, plans will be ruined by anything or change due to you're tired, due to there's a tire blowout, due to weather, due to anything. So you can't keep strict plans on a road trip because you don't have control over everything, and you don't want to ruin your trip by having strict plans. Although I will tell you this. So this is what happens when you get strict plans. I told you I didn't plan on going to the Grand Canyon until like we were in Dallas, and I was like, oh my gosh, I looked up and saw that we can go. No, when we were in Mexico, and I was like, oh shit, we can go to the Grand Canyon. So I really wanted to go to the Grand Canyon because I'd never been to the Grand Canyon. But my travel companion at this point had become completely freaked out by the two tire blowouts, and had decided that night that she wanted to fly back to New York. Let me repeat that. She wanted to fly back to New York. And I was moving to California. I had all my stuff in that. All my stuff that I didn't ship was in my car because I had to move to California. And she wanted to leave me. She wanted to leave actually in New Mexico. And she was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just stay. Her mother talked her into staying. After the second tire blowout, when we got to Flagstaff, she was like full on wanting to leave. She was like, I gotta go. Like, maybe can you drive me to the train station? I'll take the train, the Amtrak to whatever town, and I'll, maybe what's in Arizona, Phoenix. I'll take the train or whatever to Phoenix, and then I'll fly home. And I was like, okay, girl, whatever. At this point, I was just like, what the fuck? My parents were like talking to me, and they were like, leave her. If she want to leave, let her leave. My mother pretty much just said, like, drop, if she wants to leave in the morning, drop her off where she want to be left off at, and then drive to, this is the last leg of the trip, drive to Los Angeles, by yourself. It's fine. Stop at every single every single gas station, which is not practical, but stop at every single gas station and make sure you check in with your friend that lives in Los Angeles that you're going to stay with, which was my friend Gustavo. Hey, Gustavo, but I know he's not listening. But she said, stop at every gas station, but fine. Like, you're in the last part of your trip, and if she won't go, let it go. So, that was definitely not a part of the plans, but I was very much ready and able to just break from that plan of having this friend drive with me and possibly stopping somewhere on the way between Arizona and California. And I also had to give up the idea of going to the Grand Canyon, because if I had known that she was going to do all that shit in the first place, I probably would have just gone to the Grand Canyon anyway. But like, plans change, and you have to be able to, go with it. So that's what ended up happening, is that, I had to just change up my plans. She ended up not leaving. Somehow, I don't know if her mama or whoever convinced her. She woke up the next morning and she had some kind of, I don't know, epiphany, a break of insanity. But I tell you one thing, I did not let her drive on that last leg. I didn't let her drive my car at all after that. So I did the entire drive. It was 11 hours by myself. Like, I was doing the driving. She was there, like literally by myself with a passenger. It's like a long Lyft drive that wasn't being paid for, and made it to Los Angeles, made it to my friend's house. Just like, I was done. I was so done with her, so done with like just the driving, and just really got to like decompress, taking where I was. Like I was in LA. I had never been to LA before I drove into it. That was the first time I had stepped foot in Los Angeles, not in California. I'd been to San Francisco before, but this was the first time I'd been in Los Angeles. Like, you see the hills, like it was just good to be able to decompress and also be around somebody else that wasn't like insane. Just saying, I'm not someone who's trying to, like mentally shame somebody. I already told y'all about my own mental health issues, but, in that time and in that space, woo, yeah. But next day, drove to Santa Barbara and, moved into my new place, and was extremely happy when when it was time for her to go. She's like, oh, can you drive me could you drive me to LA to LAX? That's where my flight's from. I said, girl, I heard that there's a train that can take you from Santa Barbara to Los Angeles, the Amtrak, and then you can catch a bus from the Amtrak station to LAX. And that's exactly what I did. I dropped her off there, and that was it. When I tell you, there's the 3 events that will make or break your relationships with people: weddings, funerals, road trips. Number 7, have fun. Have fun. I had a great time in Montreal. Great time. I had a great time half of my trip. Half of my trip, my cross country trip. I was having fun from Atlanta all up until Dallas. After that, it was not so much fun. And that is where the relationship broke. And I didn't talk to that girl for a whole year. And it turned out that she actually thought we had a great time. And I was like, in what alternate universe? I don't know what universe you live in, but I live in this universe. Like, there's no multiverse happening here. I don't know you from Earth 2, Earth 1, Earth 3. But I'm from this Earth. Shout out to those who actually know about multiverses, and particularly the reference that I'm making to the DC Comics multiverse, especially the Flash, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth 33, Earth 34. You get it. But have fun. That's why you're going, right? And that's why you're going with a friend. Have fun. You should be having fun. And if you follow my tips, you will have fun when you road trip with friends. Again. Let me move on to the next section. So this is going to be real quick. And I told you, I'm not quite sure about this last section these sections of my podcast. And so I'm still going to go with like a kind of like a rant, get this off my chest because this is therapy. This is therapy for me and it should be therapy for you. Like, we're good friends talking, or I'm talking and you're listening and possibly talking back at me in your car, wherever you're listening to this, like how I do when I listen to podcasts. Tania found that out when we were driving. I was talking, no girl. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Cause that's how I see podcasts. It's just, a different way of communicating with other people. And, sometimes they're not able to talk back to you, but it is supposed to be this good kind of conversation. So, let me just go into the thing that just I need to get off my chest. And I want you to figure this out for me. Now, Verizon. I don't know if anybody has Verizon, but a lot of people have Verizon. It's supposed to be one of the best networks, but it's really, it has good coverage, but they have the shittiest customer service. I mean, I'm freaking recording this right now on Verizon Fios, internet. And, even that wasn't consistent because we didn't have internet or cable last week because, shit went out because of the construction happening at the house, and it took them 2 days to come and deal with that. And I was like, what the fuck? But look, I'm not talking about that version of Verizon. I'm talking about Verizon Wireless. I want to give a special fuck you to Verizon Wireless. Now, yes, I should have, as I said, checked my my coverage plan before I went to Canada. I should have thought to think like, duh, Canada's another country, even though you're not in a plane, on a boat. You did need your passport to get into this country. There is a border patrol. There is a border. There is a customs and immigration. And so you should have made sure that you have coverage in Canada, especially since that you're planning to use your data to catch Pokemon on the Sunday. So that's my fault. I'll take the L on that one. Take the responsibility. But before I even crossed the border, right? Before I even crossed the border, nothing. Like, you're still in Vermont. I'm still in Vermont. It's not in Canada. I had not crossed the border. It did not say, welcome to Canada. They did not say, you can now enter Canada yet. As soon as after I gave our passports to the border agent and she said, yep, you may go. Soon after, I get a text message from Verizon saying that you have already accrued $50, more than $50 of international charges, data charges. You may want to turn off your data. And I said, how in the fuck? I mean, like, literally I pulled over. You can still see the border patrol. Like, I was not that far. I had barely been in Canada before they started talking about that I had over $50 of international data charges. How? Tell me how. Tell me how when I was still in fucking Vermont. Tell me how. Tell me how when I was still in Vermont. How did I accrue $50 of international charges? I was like, I didn't have it. I'm like, what? Like, really? Really? Okay. So, of course, I turned my data off, but I had to give a hearty fuck you to them, and I will be calling them. But the problem about calling Verizon, and, Tania was like, you should call them and see what the issue is. The problem about calling Verizon is that they have the shittiest customer service, and you can never get anybody on the line. You can never get anybody on the line. It takes forever. They'll make you press button 1, button 2, hold on for a second, then press 1 again, then go over here. Like it takes forever to be able to get somebody. The best chance you have is to go down to the Verizon store. And even then you might be there for fucking ever trying to deal with your service plan. And so I just want to tell them ahead of time that a hearty fuck you. And when I have the energy and the time, which might be tomorrow, might be today, who knows? I am going to call you and figure this shit out. Maybe, I don't know. I've been trying to see where these $50 charges they were talking about on my account, and it doesn't say anything. I did add an international travel plan to it. It costs $70. Like, what the fuck? And this is mainly because I don't have a contract, because I'm someone who has unlimited data because I was grandfathered in. And if I gain a plan, which includes getting a data plan, they will take away my unlimited data plan. That's what, from my understanding of it. And I ain't trying to fuck with things, and I would like to keep my unlimited data because it's way cheaper than what their unlimited data plan is currently. So I'm not trying to fuck with nothing. So I don't have a plan. I'm a month to month. And because I'm a month to month, I don't have their travel pass. Like my mom has the travel pass. We all have Verizon in this household. She has a travel pass, and as soon as she gets someplace, they're like, oh, you just have to pay like $5 or $10 a day for, for whatever you use in that day. And if you don't use any data or the phone or text, you're fine. But for this one, I don't have that. I have to pay for an international travel plan. So I did that, $70. But luckily I'm going to Mexico next month. And so I'll be able to use it. I already checked it. I only used half of the data. Not like when I was in the playing Pokemon. And so I should be good for when I'm in Mexico. When I don't have Wi-Fi, that I'll be good. But I just still want to say a hearty fuck you. And I hope I do not see an extra $50 on top of the $70 that I already have to pay on top of my regular plan. Because if I do, I told you, as soon as I find something that's better than Verizon, I'm gone. And that's why I have the month to month, so I can go and they can't charge me no breaking a contract fee, like deuces. So yeah, if you know a better plan than Verizon, like seriously better plan than Verizon with good, affordable, unlimited data, hit me up. Okay. Send me an email at figureoutyourlifeblog@gmail.com or get at me in the gram. Hit me up in the DMs at Latoya T on Instagram or Figure Out Your Life Pod on Instagram. Just hit me up. The details of how to get in contact with me are in the show notes. So just hit that up and let me know, hey, you might want to switch to blank because they're way better than Verizon. And with that, I'm done with talking about Verizon. I'm going to give you some life hacks, on top of the fact of my tips. I'll give you a few just to remind you before you go on a road trip. So road trip with my friends, here's some life hacks. Okay. Not their simple list. So here, make sure you pick a friend that you know that you'll still be friends with after the trip. Like I said, I wasn't afraid to have a trip with Tania. Like we've been friends 24 years and we have been traveling together, not in a long car trip, but we have flown together. We flew to St. Lucia together, to St. Lucia and back together like 2 years ago. I've known her from high school. We've had sleepovers. She's been in my house. Like I've been in her house. Like I've known her a long time. So I knew that I wasn't going to hate her after this. Like I already knew how we roll. I already knew, like, I don't have to worry about, her not paying me back for something or arguing about money or arguing about, you should have done this. I knew we were cool. But this friend was a college friend that I only had known I graduated in 2005. The trip was in 2010. So, and I really knew her I met her sometime in I think junior year of college. I didn't even know her a decade yet. Didn't really know her family, didn't really know her like that. And that was the problem. Now, so make sure that you vet your friends. That's life hack number 1 for a road trip. Vet your friends, and don't vet it like the way my mother was telling me. She's like, you should have had a mental a health background, who is this person that you had in your car? She could have killed you. And I was like, she went to college with me. I didn't think I had to ask her what is your can I get your social security number? Can I run a credit check on you? Can I get a full medical history? Can I get a full medical history? But you don't have to go that far, but definitely make sure that this is someone that has traveled before and that is someone that you will definitely still be friends with. Like they know how to travel long term, a long way with someone else. Because I found out on the trip that she said that she had been on road trips before, but she only had driven from New York to Florida with her family, which should have been sign number 1. I didn't ever ask her if she ever gone on a road trip with friends. 1, 2. She had a thing about not driving in places that she didn't know. So since she didn't know anything past Georgia, I guess she had family in Georgia, so she didn't know anything past Georgia. She was nervous about the whole entire trip because she didn't know these areas. And she did not like when I took detours off of the highway. When your GPS will tell you get off the highway and go drive on the local roads and then come back on the highway. She did not like that. It freaked her out, even though it was during the day in major cities right next to the highway. And I was like, okay, these are all signs I should have known beforehand. So that's definitely vet your friends. Make sure it's somebody that you intend to, want to, will know that you will be able to be friends with after. Because if not, you will lose this person. And it doesn't matter if it's your boo. Like if it's somebody that it will test your relationship. And so if it's someone that you don't want to lose, don't go on a road trip with them if you know that they're not good with road trips or long trips. And that's pretty much my one major life hack, because the friendship between me and this person has not been the same. And Tania told me as I was driving with her, she's like, you have PTSD from that trip. And I was like, yes, I do. Because I'm still mad I didn't get to see the freaking Grand Canyon. I still have not been to the Grand Canyon. Still have not been, still want to be, still had I still think about how that was like the best time for me to go and see it. I was right there. I was the closest to it that I had been ever. Except for when I was in Las Vegas. But still mad about that. She's like, ooh, girl, you got PTSD. You got PTSD. I was like, I do got PTSD. That's why we are not friends like that anymore. I don't know if she listens to this, but girl, I'm just going to tell you, like, you know, the friendship ain't the same. And that it's because of that road trip. And I have learned so much about it, about myself, about other people, about driving from that trip. I thank God for it. It was an experience of a lifetime. But yeah. Vet your friends, kids. Vet your friends, adults. Vet your friends. Vet them. Look up all the information. Ask the questions. And with that, I'm done. It's a lot longer than I thought it would be. It's a lot longer than I thought it would be. But, I try to give you all the information and make sure that you get a little bit of tidbits from me. A little story time, because I got stories for days. For those who know me in real life, and you know that I got stories for days. And for those who don't know me and we're getting to know each other now through this podcast, like I think you wanted to hear that story. I think you did. And I hope I save you from losing a friend or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever by not following these tips before you go on a road trip with friends. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you enjoy the podcast, please, please, please share it with your friends. Share it with all your friends that you want to go on road trips with and you don't want to go on road trips with. Subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. So wherever you're listening to this, just go ahead and click that subscribe button that's right next to my picture. It should be subscribe to this podcast. Also, if you can do me a huge favor, please rate and review my podcast on iTunes. Like, that's how I get discovered. This is how we grow as a community. And I told you, I am determined. I am so determined to be one of the podcasts featured on Apple, particularly. I'm aiming for Black History Month. I want to be on that list with my Leak Teal and the Getting Grown podcast and Therapy for Black Girls. Like, I want to be up there. I want to be among the people that I admire in the podcasting game. I'm aspiring to be like the Reed, not the Reed. I don't want to be them. I'm aspiring to be like them, to have success like them, to have a reach like them. Because as I've learned from talking to people, from hearing, from reading the comments from other people, my voice needs to be heard. And then not just me, like just different voices, women of color, children of immigrants like I am, second generation Americans, PhD, Black women, PhD, like my story needs to be heard. Our stories need to be heard. Our voices need to be heard. And we need to be engaged in that process of spreading it. And so I thank you guys who have rated my podcast already. I thank you guys that have shared my podcast with other people. I've already hit the 200 download mark for this month, which is amazing because I only had 219 downloads in the month of August when I started actually looking at the stats, like collecting the stats, and I'm already going to surpass that point in the month of September, which only lets me know that this is going to continue to grow and that you like what you're hearing. So just continue with me, people. Help me get to my first 50 reviews and more. Go ahead and rate and subscribe this podcast on iTunes first, and then wherever else you're listening to it, rate it there, share it, subscribe. All right, guys, wherever you are, have a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're listening to this. I want you guys to be blessed. Have a great fall, and I will talk to you guys next week. All right, bye.